Mother Bear entered into the building with Lost Human Boy. What happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The rain fell in heavy sheets across the small mountain town of Pine Ridge, washing away the last hints of autumn and bringing with it a chill that crept through even the sturdiest jackets. Oliver Reed, a quiet park ranger with kind eyes and calloused hands, stared out the window of his cabin, watching the storm bend the tall pines surrounding his home. The radio on his kitchen counter crackled with static before the evening weather report confirmed what he already knew. A severe storm system would batter the region through the night. Oliver sipped his coffee and glanced at the framed photo beside the window. A smiling woman holding a small boy with eyes that matched the summer sky. His chest tightened, as it always did when he looked at that photo. 3 years had passed since the accident that took his wife, leaving him alone to raise their son, Liam, who now slept peacefully in the next room. A flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and for a brief moment Oliver caught sight of something moving near the tree line. He squinted, leaning closer to the foggy glass. There it was again, a dark shape, too large to be a deer, too deliberate in its movements to be blown debris. When the next flash came, Oliver's breath caught in his throat. A massive black bear stood at the edge of the forest, its fur slick with rain, eyes reflecting the cabin lights. Strange, he whispered to himself. Bears typically sought shelter in weather like this, not wandered near human dwellings. As a ranger, he'd encountered plenty of bears, but something about this one's behavior seemed off. It paced back and forth, occasionally raising its head as if searching for something. A loud crash from Liam's room shattered Oliver's thoughts. He bolted down the hallway, heart hammering against his ribs. The window in his son's room stood wide open, curtains dancing wildly in the wind, rain soaking the floor, and the bed was empty. "Liam!" Oliver shouted, panic rising in his throat. He ran to the window, scanning the dark yard. How had the window opened? He always kept it locked, especially during storms. A small set of muddy footprints led from the window toward the forest edge, exactly where the bear had been moments before. Oliver grabbed his flashlight and raincoat, hands trembling as he pulled on his boots. His training as a ranger told him to call for backup, but there was no time. His 4-year-old son was out there, alone in a dangerous storm, with a bear nearby. He rushed outside, rain immediately soaking through his clothes despite the coat. "Liam!" he called again, voice nearly drowned by the howling wind. The beam of his flashlight caught something small and blue in the mud, Liam's favorite stuffed dinosaur. It had been clutched in his son's arms when Oliver had tucked him in just hours before. As Oliver picked up the soaked toy, he noticed larger tracks alongside his son's tiny footprints, unmistakably those of a bear. His blood ran cold as he realized they were heading in the same direction, toward the old ranger station that sat abandoned at the forest's edge. The tracks disappeared into the tree line, where the dense canopy had kept some of the ground dry enough to hide any signs of passage. The old ranger station loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. It had been closed for renovations after last year's flooding, its windows boarded up, the door secured with a heavy chain. But as Oliver approached, his flashlight beam caught something that made his heart stop. The chain hung loose, and the door stood slightly ajar. Fresh mud smeared the weathered wood, and caught in the splintered frame was a small piece of blue fabric that matched Liam's pajamas. Behind him, a branch snapped. Oliver whirled around, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness to illuminate the massive bear standing just yards away. Rain streamed down its fur as it watched him with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold a message he couldn't understand. Then, the bear turned toward the open door of the ranger station and let out a low, rumbling sound that wasn't quite a growl. Oliver stood frozen, caught between fear for his son and his instinct to flee from the predator. The bear looked back at him once more before padding toward the station's open door, its massive frame disappearing into the darkness beyond. A child's laughter echoed from inside, sending a shock through Oliver's rain-soaked body. Liam was inside, with the bear. Thunder crashed overhead as Oliver stood paralyzed with indecision. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to rush inside and grab his son, but years of wildlife training warned him that sudden movements around a bear could prove fatal. The laughter came again, this time followed by a soft, childish voice saying words he couldn't make out. "Liam," Oliver called, his voice breaking. "Liam, it's Daddy." The rain pounded against his back as he inched closer to the door, flashlight gripped so tightly his knuckles turned white. He tried to recall everything he knew about black bear behavior. They weren't typically aggressive, unless provoked or protecting cubs. But the idea of any wild animal so close to his son made his heart hammer painfully against his ribs. As he reached the doorway, Oliver took a deep breath and slowly pushed the door wider, wincing at the long creak of rusty hinges. The beam of his flashlight swept across the interior of the old ranger station, illuminating dust-covered desks and filing cabinets. The air inside was musty and stale, with the unmistakable scent of wet animal fur now permeating the space. What he saw next made his breath catch in his throat. In the far corner of the room, his son sat cross-legged on the floor, completely unharmed. The bear lay curled around him in a protective half-circle, its massive body forming a wall between Liam and the door. But that wasn't what stopped Oliver cold. It was the small, trembling forms nestled against the bear's belly. 2 bear cubs, no more than a few months old, one noticeably smaller and weaker than the other. "Daddy!" Liam exclaimed, his face lighting up. "Look, I found a mommy bear and her babies." The mother bear's head swung toward Oliver, dark eyes assessing him with unsettling intelligence. She made no aggressive move, but her body tensed slightly. "Stay very still, buddy," Oliver said, forcing his voice to remain calm despite the terror coursing through him. "I need you to very slowly stand up and walk to me." Liam's smile faltered. "But they're cold and scared, Daddy. The little one is sick." His small hand rested on the runt cub's head, which seemed to be breathing with difficulty. "I told them they could stay in our warm house, but they followed me here instead." Oliver's mind raced. Had Liam actually left the cabin on his own to help the bears? The thought was both terrifying and incomprehensible. His 4-year-old son had somehow encountered a bear family and decided to help them? As if reading his thoughts, Liam continued, "The mommy bear was looking in my window, Daddy. She was crying for help." A chill that had nothing to do with his soaked clothes ran down Oliver's spine. The strange behavior of the bear at the edge of the forest, the open window. It was as if the animal had deliberately sought them out. "Her baby is very sick," Liam said solemnly, stroking the smaller cub's fur. "I think she wanted us to help." Oliver took another cautious step forward, and to his surprise, the mother bear made a soft, huffing noise but didn't move to intercept him. He noticed now that the smaller cub was indeed struggling, its breathing labored and a strange wheezing sound coming from its chest. "Pneumonia," he whispered, recognizing the symptoms from his wildlife management training. The cold, wet spring had been hard on newborn wildlife. Without treatment, the cub wouldn't survive the night. The station's old radio suddenly crackled to life, making everyone, including the mother bear, jump. Oliver had thought the place was completely abandoned, but apparently some of the emergency systems were still operational. "All units be advised," a voice cut through the static. "We've received reports of illegal hunting activity in the north quadrant of Pine Ridge Forest. Multiple gunshot reports near the old fire road. Game wardens en route. But all ranger personnel should be on alert for wounded wildlife or armed suspects." The mother bear's ears perked up at the sound, and she made a low, mournful sound that raised the hair on Oliver's neck. "Daddy," Liam said quietly, "I think someone hurt the daddy bear. The mommy bear showed me." "Showed you?" Oliver asked, inching closer until he was just a few feet from his son. "What do you mean, buddy?" "In my dreams," Liam said simply, as though this explained everything. "She's been in my dreams for 3 nights. She showed me the bad men with guns, and the daddy bear falling down, and the baby bear getting sick when they had to hide in the cold rain." Oliver felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His son had been dreaming about this bear before tonight? Before they'd ever encountered each other? It was impossible, and yet he remembered how his late wife, Maria, used to talk about her grandmother who lived in a small village in Romania, who claimed to have a special connection with animals. The gift, she had called it. Oliver had dismissed the stories as folklore, but Maria had always insisted there was truth behind them. She'd even said, during her pregnancy, that she felt their child would have special gifts. The smaller cub wheezed again, pulling Oliver from his thoughts. Whatever was happening, however impossible it seemed, one thing was clear. A small, innocent creature was suffering, and they might be its only chance for survival. "Liam," he said gently, kneeling down to his son's level, but still keeping a respectful distance from the bear family. "We need to help them, but we have to be very careful. This is a wild mommy bear, and even though she seems to trust you, she might get scared if we make sudden moves." The mother bear's eyes hadn't left Oliver's face. There was something in that gaze, something that seemed almost imploring. "I need to get my medical kit from the cabin," Oliver continued. "The baby bear needs medicine." As if understanding his words, the mother bear shifted, uncurling slightly from around the cubs. Liam stood up slowly, still keeping one hand on the sick cub. "She says it's okay," Liam whispered. "She says you can help." A crash from outside made them all freeze. Bright light swept across the windows of the ranger station. Headlights, the crunch of tires on gravel, car doors slamming. "Found some tracks leading this way," a gruff voice called out. "Looks like a bear, big one." "Good," another voice responded. "The buyer wants a female with cubs, triple pay if we can get all 3 alive." Oliver's blood ran cold. Poachers. Now the bear's desperate behavior made sense. She wasn't just seeking help for her sick cub, she was running from hunters who had already killed her mate. The mother bear rose to her feet, a low growl rumbling in her chest. She nudged her cubs behind her with surprising gentleness, placing herself between them and the door. "We've got to hide them," Oliver whispered urgently, suddenly aware they were all in danger. Poachers wouldn't hesitate to eliminate witnesses, especially a park ranger who could identify them. Liam looked up at him with eyes full of determination that seemed impossibly mature for his 4 years. "The basement," he said. "Mommy Bear showed me in my dream. There's a hidden place." Oliver stared at his son in astonishment. The old ranger station had indeed been built with a partial basement, a fact that wasn't common knowledge. It had been used to store emergency supplies during the Cold War era, accessible through a trapdoor that had been concealed under what was once the station chief's desk. "How could you possibly know that?" Oliver murmured, but there was no time for answers. The voices outside were getting closer. The beam of a powerful flashlight swept through the windows again, momentarily illuminating the interior of the station. Oliver grabbed Liam and pulled him down behind an old filing cabinet, just in time to avoid being spotted. The mother bear, showing an intelligence that defied Oliver's understanding of wildlife behavior, had already retreated to the shadows with her cubs clutched gently in her massive jaws. "If they come in here, we'll lead them away from the bears," Oliver whispered to Liam. "But we need to find that trapdoor first." Liam pointed to a spot in the corner where the chief's desk still stood, covered in dust and water stains from years of neglect. "There," he said with complete certainty, "under the rug." The voices outside grew louder, accompanied by the metallic click of weapons being readied. Oliver had seconds to make a decision that could determine all their fates: trust his son's impossible knowledge, or try to face armed poachers with nothing but a flashlight and his wits. With no time to question the impossible, Oliver moved. Keeping low, he crawled toward the desk, pulling Liam along beside him. The floorboards creaked beneath them, each sound magnified in the tense silence. Outside, the voices grew more distinct as the poachers approached the front door. "Check around back," commanded a deep voice with a slight accent Oliver couldn't place. They might have gone through the service entrance. "What about our equipment?" asked another man. "We need the tranquilizers for the cubs. Get them, and bring the rifles too. If we can't take them alive, dead bears still fetch a price." Oliver's jaw clenched at the casual cruelty in their voices. He reached the old desk and fumbled beneath it, feeling for any kind of latch or handle. His fingers found nothing but dust and splinters. "The rug," Liam whispered, tugging at a moldy piece of carpet partially visible beneath the desk. Oliver pulled the rotting carpet back, revealing weathered floorboards identical to those in the rest of the room. For a moment, his heart sank, but then he noticed a slight discoloration in the grain of one board, the faint outline of a square. The mother bear had moved closer, her massive form surprisingly silent for its size. She watched with those intelligent eyes as Oliver pressed on different parts of the outlined square, searching for the mechanism that would open it. The doorknob rattled. Someone was trying to get in. "It's locked," called one of the men outside. "Break it down," came the reply. Oliver pressed harder, desperation making his movements clumsy. He was about to give up when Liam reached past him and pushed on one corner of the square. There was a soft click, and the section of flooring depressed slightly. "How did you—" Oliver began, but there was no time for questions. He pulled on the edge of the trapdoor, which swung upward with a groan of protesting hinges. Below, stone steps descended into darkness. The mother bear moved forward, nosing her cubs toward the opening. The healthy cub went willingly, scrambling down the steps with surprising agility, but the sick one could barely move, its breathing now alarmingly labored. A loud crash shook the door as someone slammed against it from outside. "Liam, go down," Oliver ordered, lifting his son and placing him on the first step. "All the way down, as quiet as you can. I'll bring the sick cub." Liam nodded solemnly and began to descend into the darkness. Oliver turned to the mother bear, his heart pounding. Would she allow him to touch her cub? If she attacked him now, they'd all be discovered. "I need to help your baby," Oliver said softly, meeting the bear's gaze. "Please, let me help." To his astonishment, the bear backed away slightly, giving him access to the sick cub. With gentle hands, Oliver lifted the small creature, which felt frighteningly light and hot with fever. The cub whimpered, but didn't struggle as he cradled it against his chest. Another crash at the door, louder this time. Wood splintered. Oliver ducked into the trapdoor opening, the sick cub secure in his arms. The mother bear followed, her bulk barely fitting through the square opening. Once she was through, Oliver reached up and pulled the trapdoor closed above them, just as the station door finally gave way with a crash of breaking wood. Darkness enveloped them, absolute and disorienting. Oliver fumbled for his flashlight, clicking it on to reveal a narrow staircase leading down to a concrete room lined with metal shelves. Most were empty, but a few still held dust-covered boxes labeled emergency supplies and medical. "Down," he whispered to the mother bear, who seemed to understand. She moved past him, following Liam to the bottom of the stairs. Above them, heavy footsteps moved across the floor of the ranger station. Voices called back and forth as the poachers searched the room. "Tracks lead in but not out," someone said. "They've got to be here somewhere." Oliver placed the sick cub beside its sibling at the bottom of the stairs. The mother bear immediately curled around both cubs, licking the sick one with long, gentle strokes of her tongue. "We need those medical supplies," Oliver whispered to Liam, pointing to the shelves. "Stay with the bears while I look." The basement was small, perhaps 15 feet square, with a low ceiling that forced Oliver to stoop. It smelled of damp concrete and mildew, but it was dry at least, and the temperature was considerably warmer than the stormy night outside. He moved to the shelves labeled medical and began opening boxes. Most contained expired first aid supplies, bandages, antiseptic, and splints designed for human use. But in the back of one shelf, he found a dusty metal case with a Forest Service logo stamped on the side. Inside were veterinary antibiotics, probably left over from when the ranger station served as a wildlife rehabilitation center decades ago. "Check the basement if there is one," came a muffled voice from above. "Bears like to den underground." Oliver froze. How did they know about the basement? It wasn't on any of the public plans for the building. "There's no basement in these old ranger stations," another voice replied. "Just check under the desks and in the closets. We're wasting time." Oliver let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He hurried back to the bears with the medical case. The sick cub was worse, its breathing now a series of desperate wheezes. Without proper veterinary equipment, Oliver would have to improvise. "I'm going to help your baby," he told the mother bear softly as he knelt beside her. "But I need you to stay calm." The bear watched him with those unnervingly intelligent eyes as he prepared a syringe of antibiotics. Oliver had basic training in wildlife first aid. All rangers did. But treating a critically ill bear cub went far beyond his expertise. Still, without intervention, the cub would certainly die. As he gently inserted the needle into the cub's thigh, he whispered, "This might hurt a little, but it will help you feel better." The cub whimpered, and the mother bear tensed but didn't interfere. The healthy cub nuzzled its sibling as if offering comfort. Liam sat cross-legged beside them, his small hand resting on the mother bear's massive paw with a familiarity that still stunned Oliver. "It's okay," his son whispered to the bear. "My daddy helps animals all the time." Upstairs, the search continued. Furniture scraped across the floor as the poachers grew more frustrated. "They can't have just disappeared," the accented voice growled. "The tracks led straight here." "Maybe they went out through a window," suggested another man. "In this storm? With cubs? Check again." Oliver administered a second injection, a mild sedative that would help the cub breathe more easily. As he worked, a question nagged at him. How had these poachers tracked the bear family so effectively through a raging storm? And why were they so determined to capture them alive? Bears were illegally hunted for their gallbladders and paws, which fetched high prices in certain black markets, but live captures were rare and far more difficult. "Liam," Oliver whispered, "did you see anything else in your dreams?" About the men chasing the bears? Liam nodded, his eyes wide in the flashlight's glow. They had special cameras that see in the dark, and they put something on the daddy bear before he got away. A tracking device, Oliver muttered. That explained how they'd followed the bears to his cabin, but it still didn't explain why they wanted the bears alive. Footsteps moved directly overhead now. Dust sifted down from between the floorboards as the poachers passed back and forth. Oliver held his breath, covering the flashlight with his hand to dim its glow. The minutes stretched painfully as they waited in tense silence. Eventually, the footsteps receded. "Nothing here," called one of the men. The storm must have washed away their exit tracks. "Impossible," insisted the accented voice. "The signal shows they're right here." Oliver's blood ran cold. If they had a tracking device, they wouldn't give up so easily. "The tracking device," he whispered to Liam. "Is it on one of the cubs?" Liam shook his head and pointed to the mother bear's right ear, where Oliver now noticed a small, dark object partially embedded in the flesh. It was barely visible against the bear's black fur, a tiny transmitter that had likely been shot into her ear during a previous encounter with the poachers. With trembling fingers, Oliver reached for his multi-tool. The mother bear watched him, then did something that left him breathless. She tilted her head toward him, offering him access to her ear. "This will hurt," Oliver warned, though he wasn't sure if the bear could understand him. "But it will keep you safe." Outside, car doors slammed. Engines started. "They're moving on," Liam whispered excitedly. "No," Oliver said grimly. "They're regrouping. We don't have much time." With a quick motion, he extracted the small transmitter from the bear's ear. A trickle of blood followed, but the bear remained still, only a slight rumble in her chest betraying her discomfort. "I need to get this far away from here," Oliver said, examining the tiny device. "Make them think you've moved on." The mother bear made a soft huffing noise and nudged Oliver's hand with her nose. There was something almost like gratitude in the gesture. The sick cub's breathing had already improved slightly, its desperate wheezing softer now. The antibiotics were working, but the cub would need more treatment and time to recover fully. "I have to go upstairs," Oliver told Liam. "I need to throw this tracker as far as I can to lead them away. You stay here with the bears." Fear flashed across Liam's face. "But what if the bad men come back?" "I'll be right back," Oliver promised. "Just stay quiet and keep the flashlight covered." He placed his hand on the trapdoor, listening intently. The station above seemed silent now, but he couldn't be certain the poachers were truly gone. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the trapdoor up just enough to peer out. The main room was empty, the front door hanging from broken hinges. Rain continued to pour in through the open doorway, pooling on the wooden floor. Oliver slipped out of the basement and closed the trap door carefully behind him. Moving to the broken door, he peered out into the storm. 2 vehicles were parked in the clearing before the station, a black SUV with tinted windows and a mud-spattered pickup truck. 4 men stood beside the vehicles, huddled under the meager shelter of a pine tree, as they studied something one of them held. Oliver ducked back inside before they could spot him. He needed to get the tracking device far from the station, but with the poachers still so close, leaving would put him at risk of discovery. A flash of inspiration struck him. The old ranger station had a network of drainage pipes that led from the gutters down to a creek a 1/4 mile away. If he could get the tracker into one of those pipes, the rushing rainwater would carry it far from their location. He moved to a window on the side of the building away from the poachers and forced it open. Outside, the gutter downspout ran just below the windowsill. With a silent prayer, he dropped the tiny transmitter into the rushing water of the downspout and heard a faint plinking sound as it was swept away. "The signal's moving," came a shout from outside. "South, toward the creek!" Oliver allowed himself a moment of relief before a new sound froze his blood, the distinctive click of a gun being cocked directly behind him. "Don't move, friend," said a voice with the same accent he'd heard earlier. "Not if you want to see your boy again." Oliver's muscles locked, his mind racing through options that all seemed impossible. He raised his hands slowly, turning to face the threat. The man standing behind him was tall and lean, with sharp features partially hidden beneath a heavy beard. He wore expensive hunting gear despite the warm spring weather, and the rifle in his hands was no ordinary hunting weapon. It was a custom tranquilizer gun with military-grade modifications. "Park Ranger," the man observed, noticing Oliver's uniform beneath his rain jacket. "What are you doing out in this storm, in an abandoned building?" "I could ask you the same thing," Oliver replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "This is protected forest land. Hunting is prohibited in this sector." The man's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "We're not hunting, we're collecting. There's a difference." He tilted his head, studying Oliver. "You removed something from one of my specimens just now. Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." The smile disappeared. "The tracking device. The one you just threw out the window. Our little investment was moving quite steadily in one direction, then suddenly changed course. Rather convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Outside, engines started. The other poachers were following the false trail of the tracker. "Now," the man continued, "where is the mother bear and her cubs? The one you've been hiding." Oliver's mind raced. This man knew too much, was too confident. A terrible realization dawned on him. They must have been watching his cabin before the storm hit. They might have even seen Liam interact with the bears. "There are no bears here," Oliver insisted. "Just me. I'm on patrol, checking buildings for storm damage." The man sighed as if disappointed. "Rangers, always so predictable with your conservation speeches." He took a step closer, the rifle still aimed at Oliver's chest. "Let me be clear. Those bears are worth a great deal of money to people who don't care about your wildlife protection laws. The mother, specifically, is quite valuable. There aren't many black bears with her particular gifts." A chill ran down Oliver's spine. "Gifts?" The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't play ignorant. You've seen it, or you wouldn't be protecting her. The intelligence, the awareness, the connection." He gestured toward the window. "Black bears don't seek out humans for help. They don't lead children to safety. They don't allow humans to treat their cubs, unless they're special." Oliver kept his expression neutral despite his shock. How long had they been watching? And what did this man mean by gifts? "There are rumors," the man continued, "of bears in these mountains that are different. Bears that understand human speech, that can communicate in ways no animal should. Bears that some of the locals claim have special powers. My employer pays extremely well for such specimens." "Your employer?" "A collector of unique biological anomalies," the man replied with a casual shrug. "The specific application of his research isn't my concern. Now, where are they?" A floorboard creaked somewhere in the building. The man's head snapped toward the sound, momentarily distracted. In that split second, Oliver lunged forward, grabbing the barrel of the rifle and shoving it upward. The gun discharged with a muffled thump, sending a tranquilizer dart into the ceiling. Oliver drove his shoulder into the man's chest, using his weight to slam him against the wall. The rifle clattered to the floor. The poacher was stronger than he looked, though, recovering quickly and landing a solid punch to Oliver's ribs that knocked the wind from his lungs. They grappled in the darkness, each fighting for advantage. Oliver managed to land a hard blow to the man's jaw, sending him staggering backward. But as Oliver moved to press his advantage, his foot slipped on the rain-soaked floor, and he went down hard, striking his head against the edge of an old desk. Stars exploded across his vision. He felt the warm trickle of blood down his temple as he struggled to regain his feet. The poacher was already up, retrieving his rifle and leveling it at Oliver once more. "That was foolish," the man said, breathing heavily. "Now, I'll ask one last time before I start using more persuasive methods. Where are the bears?" Before Oliver could respond, a low, rumbling growl filled the room, a sound so deep it seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Both men turned toward the source. The mother bear stood in the shadows, reared up on her hind legs, nearly 8 feet tall and radiating fury. Her eyes reflected the faint light from outside, 2 glowing points in the darkness. The poacher's face lit with triumph. "There you are," he murmured, swinging his rifle toward her. "Worth every bit of trouble you've caused." "No!" Oliver shouted, knowing the man would tranquilize the bear and kill him as a witness. What happened next occurred so quickly that Oliver later struggled to piece it together. As the poacher took aim, a small figure darted from the shadows. Liam, moving with a child's silent quickness, grabbed the poacher's leg. "Leave them alone!" Liam shouted. Startled, the poacher stumbled, his shot going wide. The tranquilizer dart embedded itself in the wall as he tried to shake Liam off. "Get back, you little—" The poacher reached down to grab Liam, his face twisted with rage. The mother bear charged. Oliver had seen bears move before, had filmed them for research studies and conservation documentaries, but he had never seen anything like this. The massive animal covered the distance between them in what seemed like a single heartbeat, moving with impossible speed and precision. She didn't attack with claws or teeth as Oliver expected. Instead, she slammed her massive shoulder into the poacher, sending him flying across the room to crash into the wall. The rifle went off again as it fell from his hands, but the dart missed everyone, skittering across the floor. The mother bear placed herself between Liam and the dazed poacher, her message unmistakable. The child was under her protection. "Daddy!" Liam ran to Oliver, who pulled him close, checking him for injuries. "I told you to stay in the basement," Oliver said, his voice shaking with relief and fear. "The baby bear got better," Liam explained earnestly. "He told me to come help you." Oliver didn't have time to process that impossible statement. The poacher was already struggling to his feet, pulling something from his jacket, a pistol, small but deadly. "Remarkable," the man said, a hint of genuine admiration in his voice as he aimed at the bear. "My employer will be very pleased." "Your employer will have to be disappointed," came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a woman standing in the broken entrance, rain dripping from her dark poncho. She held a shotgun with practiced ease, its barrel pointed steadily at the poacher. Her badge gleamed on her belt. State Wildlife Officer. "Officer Chen," she introduced herself, not taking her eyes off the poacher. "Drop the weapon, now." For a moment, the poacher seemed to consider his options. His gaze flicked from the officer to the bear to Oliver and Liam. Finally, with a grimace of frustration, he lowered the pistol to the floor. "This is a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "I'm a licensed wildlife biologist conducting approved research." "Save it," Officer Chen replied. "We've been tracking your operation for months." She gestured with her shotgun. "Hands on your head, face the wall." As the poacher complied, she spoke into the radio at her shoulder. "Chen to dispatch. I've apprehended one suspect at the old ranger station. Send backup and a medical team." She looked at Oliver and Liam. Are you two all right? We're okay, Oliver answered, still holding Liam tightly against him. But there are others, already in custody, she assured him. We intercepted them following a false trail toward the creek. Your diversion worked. Oliver stared at her in surprise. How did you know about that? Officer Chen's expression softened slightly. We've had the station under surveillance since we got reports of poaching in the area. We saw you throw the tracker and figured out what you were doing. Her eyes moved to the mother bear, who still stood protectively near them. Though I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this. The mother bear hadn't moved, her eyes fixed on the poacher. There was an uncanny awareness in her gaze, an intelligence that seemed to confirm everything the poacher had claimed about her being special. The bear has 2 cubs in the basement, Oliver explained. One is sick. I administered antibiotics from the emergency supplies down there. Officer Chen nodded slowly, her professional demeanor momentarily overcome by awe as she observed the bear's calm behavior around humans. We've heard stories about her. Some of the old-timers in the department call her the Guardian. They say she's been protecting these woods for years, intervening when hikers get lost or when other animals are in danger. She shook her head. I always thought they were just ranger tall tales. She led my son to safety, Oliver said, and she came to us for help with her cub. The poacher laughed bitterly from his position against the wall. And you still don't understand what you've found. That bear is worth millions to the right buyer. That bear, Officer Chen replied firmly, isn't for sale at any price. She's a protected species in a protected forest. She reached for her handcuffs. And you're under arrest for poaching, illegal trafficking of endangered species, trespassing on federal land, and assault. As Officer Chen secured the poacher, Oliver knelt beside Liam. Are the cubs really okay? He asked softly. Liam nodded, his face serious. The sick one is breathing better. He says his chest doesn't hurt so much now. Oliver paused. He says, uh-huh. Liam spoke as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Bears don't talk like people, Daddy. They talk in feelings and pictures in your head, but you have to be really quiet inside to hear them. The mother bear made a soft huffing noise, almost like agreement. She lowered herself to all fours and padded toward the trapdoor, looking back at them expectantly. I think she wants us to check on her cubs, Oliver said, rising to his feet. Officer Chen finished securing the poacher to a radiator pipe and joined them. I'll need to document the cub's condition for our report, she explained. And we'll have a wildlife vet here soon to make sure they get proper treatment. Together, they followed the mother bear to the basement, where the 2 cubs waited. The sick cub was indeed breathing more easily, though it still looked weak. The healthy cub bounded around its sibling, occasionally nudging it playfully. As the adults assessed the situation, Liam sat beside the bears, speaking softly to them as if continuing a conversation only he could hear. The mother bear lay down beside her cubs, allowing Liam to lean against her massive side as naturally as if she were a family pet. I've never seen anything like this, Officer Chen murmured to Oliver. Bears don't behave this way with humans. It's like she knows you're trying to help. I think she does know, Oliver replied, watching his son laugh at something only he understood. My wife's grandmother used to talk about people with special connections to animals. I always thought they were just folk tales, but Liam... He shook his head, still struggling to process everything that had happened. He says the bears talk to him in feelings and pictures. Officer Chen's radio crackled, announcing that backup was 5 minutes out. What will happen to them now? Oliver asked, nodding toward the bear family. Normally, we'd relocate them deeper into the protected wilderness, she answered. But with a case this unusual, I'm not sure. The poachers specifically targeted this bear family because of their unique behavior. If they're released back into the wild, others might come looking for them. The mother bear watched them intently, her eyes moving between the humans as if following their conversation. She understands, Liam said suddenly. She knows you're talking about her? Officer Chen looked startled, but before she could respond, shouting erupted from upstairs. Multiple voices called back and forth as the backup officers arrived and discovered the apprehended poacher. "Stay here," Officer Chen instructed, heading for the stairs. "I need to brief my team." As she disappeared up the trapdoor, Oliver sat beside Liam and the bears, exhaustion settling over him like a heavy blanket. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was fading, leaving him shaky and lightheaded. The cut on his temple throbbed painfully. "You okay, buddy?" he asked Liam, who was stroking the sick cub's head with gentle fingers. "Uh-huh, but Daddy, we can't let them take the bears away." Liam's eyes filled with tears. "They need us." Oliver sighed, unsure how to explain the complexities of wildlife management to a 4-year-old. "Wild animals belong in the wild, Liam. That's their home." "But the bad men will find them again," Liam insisted. "Mommy Bear showed me. More bad men will come." The certainty in his son's voice sent a chill through Oliver. He remembered the poacher's words about his employer, a collector willing to pay millions for bears with gifts. If one group had targeted this bear family, others might follow. The mother bear made a soft rumbling sound and nudged Liam with her nose. The boy nodded as if she had spoken to him. "She says they can't go back to their old cave," Liam translated. "The bad men know where it is, and her special place isn't safe anymore." "Special place?" Oliver asked. "The place where all the special bears go, deep in the mountains. But it's not safe now because the bad men found it." Oliver stared at his son, then at the bear, a wild thought taking shape in his mind. What if there was a population of these unusual bears hidden somewhere in the forest? Bears with heightened intelligence, with the ability to communicate in ways that defied scientific understanding? It seemed impossible, but then, everything about this night had been impossible. Heavy footsteps approached the trapdoor, and Officer Chen returned, accompanied by an older man in a wildlife management uniform. His weathered face broke into an expression of wonder as he spotted the bear family. "I'll be damned," he whispered. "It really is her." "This is Dr. Michaels," Officer Chen introduced. "He's been with the Wildlife Service for 30 years, specializing in bear behavior." Dr. Michaels approached slowly, maintaining a respectful distance. "I've been tracking rumors of this bear for over a decade," he explained. "Most of my colleagues think I'm chasing fairy tales." His gaze fixed on Liam. "And who's this young man?" "My son, Liam," Oliver answered. "He seems to have some kind of connection with the bears." Dr. Michaels nodded as if this made perfect sense. The old stories mentioned human companions, people who could understand the guardian bears. They were called speakers in the local indigenous legends. He knelt to Liam's level. "Can you understand what she's saying, son?" Liam nodded solemnly. "She talks in pictures and feelings, and sometimes words, but not like our words." "Amazing," Dr. Michaels breathed. He looked up at Oliver. "Your boy has a gift that's incredibly rare. The Nez Perce tribe who originally inhabited these mountains believed that certain children were born with the ability to communicate with guardian spirits who took animal form." Oliver frowned. I don't understand what any of this has to do with where the bears will go now. They need a safe place, away from poachers. That's what I came to discuss, Doctor, Michael said. We've been developing a special conservation area specifically for bears like these. Bears that show unusual behavioral patterns and intelligence. It's a remote valley, about 100 miles north of here, with natural barriers that make it difficult for humans to access. We call it the sanctuary. Is it really safe? Oliver asked skeptically. The poacher mentioned his employer has been tracking these bears for years. Dr. Michael's expression darkened. We believe we know who's behind this poaching operation, a private research foundation called GeneTech Biomedical. They specialize in studying anomalous animal cognition, supposedly for medical research purposes. In reality, they're experimenting with ways to enhance animal intelligence and communication through genetic modification. You think they want these bears for experiments? Oliver felt sick at the thought. Not exactly, Doctor, Michaels replied. We believe they want to study them to understand how their natural abilities work, then replicate those abilities artificially. Think about it. Animals that can understand human speech, that can communicate complex concepts, that can form bonds with humans beyond ordinary domestication. The military and pharmaceutical applications alone would be worth billions. The mother bear growled softly, pulling her cubs closer to her. She understands what you're saying, Liam whispered. She's afraid. Dr. Michaels nodded grimly. She should be. These poachers aren't the first to come after her kind, and they won't be the last. The sanctuary is our best option, but even that might not be enough if GeneTech is determined enough. A young officer appeared at the trap door. Dr. Michaels, the transport team is here with the wildlife ambulance. They're ready whenever you are. Thank you, Doctor, Michaels replied. He turned back to Oliver. We need to move quickly. The storm is letting up and we want to get the bears to safety before dawn. Oliver looked at his son, still nestled against the mother bear's side as if he belonged there. What about Liam? He's formed some kind of bond with them. That's actually something I wanted to discuss with you, Dr. Michaels said, lowering his voice. The sanctuary isn't just a wildlife preserve. It's also a research center where we study the unique relationships between these bears and their human companions. We have a small community of staff who live there year-round, biologists, conservationists, and a few families with children who have gifts similar to your son's. Oliver stared at him in disbelief. Are you suggesting we move there? Leave our home? Not permanently, Doctor, Michaels clarified. But perhaps for the summer. We offer positions for qualified rangers and we have a small school for the children. It would give us a chance to understand Liam's connection to these bears, and it would ease their transition to their new environment. He glanced at Liam. The bond works both ways. They'll be frightened in a new place without a familiar human presence. Before Oliver could respond, the sick cub let out a pitiful whine. Dr. Michaels immediately moved closer, examining it with a practiced eye. This little one needs more advanced care than what we can provide here, he said urgently. The antibiotics were a good start, but there's fluid in the lungs. We need to get them to the medical facility at the sanctuary as soon as possible. The mother bear made a soft chuffing sound and nudged Liam gently, then looked at Oliver with those eerily intelligent eyes. It was almost as if she were asking for his help, his permission. Liam, what is she telling you? Oliver asked softly. Liam's face scrunched in concentration. She says her baby is very sick. She says there are more bad men looking for them and they need to go to the special place. But, he paused, looking troubled. She's scared to go without us. She doesn't know the other humans there." Dr. Michaels nodded. "That's not surprising. These bears form strong attachments, especially when humans have helped them. The indigenous legends describe lifelong bonds between speakers and guardian bears." Oliver ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by the impossible choices before him. Their quiet life in Pine Ridge had been upended in a single night, replaced by talk of special bears, secret sanctuaries, and corporate conspiracies. It sounded like something from a science fiction novel, not reality, and yet the evidence was right in front of him. His son communicating with a wild bear that had shown intelligence and behavior far beyond what should be possible. A bear that had sought human help, that had protected his child, that seemed to understand human speech. "I can't just uproot our lives on a moment's notice," Oliver protested. "I have responsibilities here, and Liam has school." "Of course," Dr. Michaels acknowledged. "I understand it's a lot to process, but I should mention that the sanctuary offers generous compensation for professional consultants, and the educational opportunities for children like Liam are extraordinary." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The storm that brought these bears to your doorstep wasn't a coincidence." "What do you mean?" "The guardian bears have abilities beyond simple intelligence," Dr. Michaels explained. "The indigenous legends speak of them finding their human companions through dreams, through connections that transcend ordinary understanding. Liam mentioned the bear appearing in his dreams before tonight, didn't he?" Oliver nodded reluctantly. "He said she showed him things, about the poachers, about her injured mate, about the sick cub. It's a form of communication we don't fully understand," Dr. Michaels said. "But we've documented similar cases. Children dreaming of bears in trouble days before actually encountering them. Children leading search parties straight to injured bears they had no way of knowing about. The connection, once formed, doesn't simply disappear with distance." A chill ran down Oliver's spine as he realized what the man was suggesting. "You're saying that even if the bears go to this sanctuary without us, Liam will still feel their distress, their needs, their calls for help. The connection works across surprising distances, especially in children whose gifts are just awakening." Dr. Michaels smiled sympathetically. "I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but you should be prepared for the possibility that this is just the beginning. Your son has a rare and precious ability that could make an enormous difference for these amazing creatures." The mother bear shifted, bringing her face close to Oliver's. Her breath was warm against his skin as she gazed into his eyes with an intelligence that could not be denied. In that moment, something passed between them, not words or pictures as Liam described, but a feeling of trust, of connection, of shared purpose. "She's saying thank you," Liam whispered, "for helping her babies, and she's saying she'll keep us safe if we come with her." Oliver found himself at a crossroads he had never imagined facing. The practical part of him, the single father who had carefully reconstructed a stable life for his son after tragedy, warned against dramatic changes based on a single strange night. But another part of him, perhaps the part that had fallen in love with these mountains and their mysteries years ago, whispered that some opportunities came only once in a lifetime. "I need time to think," Oliver said finally. "But first, let's make sure these cubs get the medical attention they need." Dr. Michaels nodded. "The transport team is waiting. They can take the bears to our local medical facility tonight, then arrange transport to the sanctuary once the cubs are stabilized." He hesitated. "And if you decide you want to learn more about the sanctuary, about what your son's connection to these bears might mean, just let Officer Chen know. She can reach me any time." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Wildlife medical technicians carefully sedated the mother bear, a precaution she seemed to accept with remarkable calm after Liam explained what would happen. The cubs were placed in special carriers, with the sick one receiving oxygen and intravenous antibiotics. Oliver gave his statement to the officers, describing the poachers and their operation while carefully omitting the more inexplicable aspects of the night's events. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the forest washed clean and glistening in the early light. Oliver stood in the clearing outside the ranger station, holding a sleeping Liam in his arms, as they watched the wildlife transport vehicle drive carefully away with its precious cargo. "They'll be fine," Officer Chen assured him, appearing at his side. "The medical team at the sanctuary is the best in the country." Oliver nodded wearily. "What will happen to the poachers?" "They'll face federal charges, illegal hunting, trafficking endangered species, assault with a deadly weapon." She smiled grimly. "We've been building a case against GeneTech Biomedical for years. With luck, the evidence we gathered tonight will help shut down their entire operation." "And the bears?" Officer Chen's expression softened. "Once they've recovered, they'll have a good life at the sanctuary. It's a beautiful place. Thousands of acres of pristine wilderness, protected by both natural barriers and the latest security technology. They'll be as safe there as it's possible for them to be. But will they be happy?" Oliver wondered aloud. "Separated from their home, from their connections here?" Officer Chen gave him a knowing look. "Doctor, Michael's left something for you." She handed him a sealed envelope. "Information about the sanctuary, about the positions available there, about the program for children like Liam. He said you should take all the time you need to decide." Oliver accepted the envelope, feeling its weight in his hands, the weight of a decision that could change their lives forever. "What would you do?" he asked softly. Officer Chen considered the question seriously. "I've visited the sanctuary. I've seen the work they do there, the relationships between the bears and their human companions. It's unlike anything else in the world." She smiled. "If I had a child with Liam's gift, I wouldn't hesitate. Some opportunities are once in a lifetime." As they walked back toward Oliver's cabin, Liam stirred in his arms, blinking sleepily in the morning light. "Daddy," he murmured, "where are the bears?" "They've gone to get better," Oliver explained gently. "The doctors are taking good care of them." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then he looked up at the brightening sky, his expression suddenly serious beyond his years. "She's still talking to me, Daddy," he whispered. "She says they're waiting for us, in the special place where the guardian bears live." Oliver held his son closer, feeling the weight of the envelope in his pocket and the weight of a decision unlike any he had ever faced. As they crested the hill overlooking their cabin, the rising sun broke through the clouds, casting the forest in a golden light that seemed to illuminate a path forward, a path that had always been there, waiting for them to find it. 3 weeks later, Oliver stood at the window of a small cabin nestled among towering pines, watching Liam play in a sunlit meadow. The boy's laughter carried on the mountain breeze as he ran through tall grass dotted with wildflowers, arms outstretched like an airplane. In many ways, it was a scene from any family vacation in the mountains. A father watching his son enjoy the freedom of nature, far from the distractions of modern life. But this was no ordinary vacation, and the meadow was no ordinary place. At the edge of the clearing, partially hidden in the dappled shade of the forest, a black bear cub watched Liam's antics with obvious interest. Occasionally, the cub would venture a few steps into the sunlight, then retreat back to the safety of the trees, still cautious despite the bond that had formed between them. "He's doing much better," said a voice behind Oliver. "Both of them are." Dr. Michaels had entered the cabin silently, a habit Oliver was still getting used to. The older man joined him at the window, smiling as he observed Liam and the cub. "The antibiotics cleared the pneumonia completely?" Oliver asked. "Yes, and he's gained nearly 2 pounds since you last visited. Cubs that age should be putting on weight rapidly, so that's an excellent sign." Dr. Michaels consulted the tablet he carried everywhere. "His lung function is back to normal, and all blood markers are within healthy ranges. I'd say he's made a full recovery." Oliver felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The sick cub's condition had been touch and go for the first week after their arrival at the sanctuary. Despite advanced medical care, the pneumonia had initially worsened, sending the cub into respiratory distress that required emergency intervention. Liam had known something was wrong even before the medical team, waking from a sound sleep in their temporary housing and insisting that the baby bear can't breathe. Their hasty midnight visit to the medical facility had indeed found the cub struggling, allowing the veterinarians to intervene before permanent damage occurred. It was yet another inexplicable aspect of the Liam's connection to the bears, one that had convinced Oliver they had made the right decision in accepting Dr. Michaels' offer of a summer position at the sanctuary. "And the mother?" Oliver asked, scanning the tree line. She was harder to spot, her black fur blending perfectly with the shadows. "Remarkable recovery," Dr. Michaels reported. "The tracking device had caused a low-grade infection in her ear, but that's healing well. Physically, she's in excellent condition." He paused. "Behaviorally, she's still more guarded than we'd like. She allows Liam near the cubs, but remains wary of other humans, even our most experienced staff." "Can you blame her? After what humans did to her mate?" Dr. Michaels nodded sadly. "We've been monitoring reports from game wardens in the region where she was captured. They found a male black bear shot about a month ago. Poachers took the gallbladder and paws but left the rest. It's likely it was her mate." The thought made Oliver sick. He'd spent his career trying to protect wildlife, but the illegal trade in animal parts continued despite conservation efforts. Bears were particularly vulnerable, their parts fetching high prices in certain markets for use in traditional medicines and exotic foods. "Has there been any progress tracking down this gene tech company?" he asked. Dr. Michaels' expression darkened. "They're slippery. The poachers we captured were hired through multiple layers of shell companies. They've provided some information in exchange for reduced sentences, but nothing that directly links back to GeneTech's upper management." He sighed. "We know they're still operating, still searching for these bears. That's why security here remains our top priority." Oliver had seen that security firsthand during the rigorous process of their arrival at the sanctuary. The journey had involved multiple vehicle changes, blindfolds during certain segments, and a final approach by helicopter to the hidden valley. The sanctuary itself was surrounded by sheer cliffs on 3 sides and a single, heavily guarded access road on the 4th. Surveillance systems monitored every approach, and armed rangers patrolled the perimeter. It seemed extreme until one understood what was at stake: the protection of a unique population of bears with abilities that defied scientific explanation, and the children who could communicate with them. "Liam seems to be adjusting well," Dr. Michaels observed, watching as the boy coaxed the cub further into the meadow with gentle words and encouraging gestures. "Better than I expected," Oliver admitted. "But he still asks about going home sometimes. He misses his friends, his preschool. That's natural. And remember, this arrangement doesn't have to be permanent." Dr. Michael turned from the window to face Oliver directly. "The summer position you accepted runs through September. By then, you'll have a better sense of whether the sanctuary is the right place for you and Liam long term." Oliver nodded, though the decision still felt overwhelming. Their life in Pine Ridge had been predictable, stable, exactly what he'd sought after Maria's death. The sanctuary offered something entirely different, a place where Liam's unusual abilities were not only accepted, but celebrated, where he could develop a gift that might otherwise have been dismissed as childish imagination. But it also meant isolation from the broader world, secrecy, and constant awareness of potential threats. Was that really the childhood he wanted for his son? "I've been meaning to ask," Oliver said, changing the subject. "How many children like Liam are there here?" "Currently, 8, ranging in age from 4 to 17, Dr. Michaels answered. "Each connected to specific bears or bear families. Some discovered their abilities like Liam did, through dreams and spontaneous connections. Others were born into families that have worked with the sanctuary for generations. And they all can communicate with the bears. Yes, though their abilities manifest differently. Some receive primarily emotional impressions, others get mental images or sensory experiences. A few of the older children describe something closer to actual language. Not human words, but structured communication they can translate." He smiled. "You'll meet them all at the community dinner tonight. The children have been eager to meet Liam since they heard about his connection to the guardian mother." "The guardian mother?" Oliver repeated. "That's what they call her, the bear who found you and Liam. She has a reputation even among the sanctuary bears. The teenagers who work with our historical records believe she might be a descendant of the original guardian bears described in indigenous legends from centuries ago." Dr. Michaels checked his watch. "Speaking of which, I should get back to the research center. We're analyzing genetic samples today, looking for markers that might help explain the neurological basis for these bears' enhanced cognitive abilities." After Dr. Michaels left, Oliver stepped outside onto the cabin's small porch. Their temporary home was one of a dozen similar structures scattered throughout the hidden valley, each designed to blend with the natural environment. Solar panels provided electricity, and a central lodge housed communal dining facilities and meeting spaces. The research center and medical facilities were located in larger buildings at the valley's eastern end, partially built into the mountainside for security and climate control. It was a place of contradictions. Cutting-edge technology in a wilderness setting, scientific research alongside what could only be described as mystical connections between humans and animals. Oliver still struggled to reconcile the rational, evidence-based worldview of his ranger training with what he witnessed daily at the sanctuary. Liam waved at him from the meadow, gesturing excitedly for him to join them. The bear cub had grown bolder, now sitting just a few feet from the boy, occasionally batting at a butterfly that fluttered between them. As Oliver approached, he noticed a darker shadow detach itself from the forest edge. The mother bear, moving with characteristic grace despite her size. She padded silently toward Liam and the cub, her movements unhurried and deliberate. Oliver's heart still quickened at the sight of her, his protective instincts warring with his growing trust in the unusual relationship between his son and these wild creatures. "Look, Daddy," Liam called. "She's going to show us something special today." "Is she?" Oliver kept his voice casual, though his curiosity was genuine. Over the past weeks, he'd witnessed enough to know that Liam's interpretations of the bear's intentions were typically accurate. The mother bear stopped a respectful distance from them, sitting back on her haunches in a posture that seemed almost human in its deliberation. She made a soft chuffing sound, and the cub immediately abandoned its play to join her. "She wants us to follow," Liam announced confidently, already moving toward the forest edge. There's a special place she wants to show us." Oliver hesitated. They had explored parts of the valley with Dr. Michaels and other staff, but venturing into the forest with only the bears as guides felt like crossing a boundary. The rational part of his mind reminded him that, despite their unusual behavior, these were still wild animals with instincts and reactions that could be unpredictable. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, buddy," he began. "We should probably check with Dr. Michaels first." Liam turned to him with an expression of such certainty that Oliver was momentarily taken aback. "It's okay, Daddy. She's one of the old ones. She knows all the special places. She wants to show us because we helped her babies." "The old ones?" "The bears that remember everything, the ones that teach the other bears." Liam spoke matter-of-factly, as if explaining something obvious. "Some bears just know bear things, but the old ones know people things too. They remember from a long time ago." Oliver felt a familiar chill at his son's words. Liam had been sharing these kinds of insights more frequently since their arrival at the sanctuary. Casual comments that revealed a worldview both ancient and alien. Dr. Michaels had explained that this was common among the children who communicated with the bears. They absorbed not just specific messages, but entire conceptual frameworks that shaped how they understood the world. The mother bear watched them patiently, her intelligent eyes moving between father and son as if following their conversation. When Oliver still hesitated, she did something unexpected. She walked closer, moving slowly and deliberately until she stood directly before him. Then, in a gesture he would have considered impossible weeks ago, she dipped her massive head in what could only be described as a bow. "She's promising to keep us safe," Liam translated, his voice filled with wonder. "She never does that with grown-ups, only with the children." Oliver found himself speechless. The bear's eyes met his, and in that moment he felt something he couldn't explain. A connection that bypassed language, that reached for something deeper and more primal. It wasn't the complex communication Liam described, more like an emotional impression. Respect, gratitude, invitation. "All right," he said finally, "but we stay together and we don't go far." Liam's face lit up with excitement. "Thank you, Daddy." He turned to the bears. "He says we can come." The mother bear made a soft sound that might have been approval, then turned and began walking into the forest, her cub scampering alongside her. Liam followed without hesitation, and Oliver fell into step behind them, still marveling at the surreal nature of their situation. The forest grew denser as they moved away from the meadow, ancient pines giving way to a mixed woodland of maple, oak, and birch. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled patterns, illuminating a forest floor carpeted with ferns and wildflowers. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of pine and damp earth. Oliver had expected to feel anxious, venturing into unfamiliar territory with only wild animals as guides, but instead found himself experiencing an unexpected sense of peace. There was something about the rhythm of their walk, the bear's confident movements, and Liam's absolute trust that soothed his usual hypervigilance. After about 20 minutes of steady walking, the forest opened into a small clearing, dominated by a massive oak tree that must have been centuries old. Its trunk was wider than Oliver could have encircled with his arms, its branches spreading in a canopy that shaded most of the clearing. At its base, between gnarled roots that rose like wooden waves from the forest floor, was a small spring, clear water bubbling up from the earth to form a shallow pool before flowing away in a narrow stream. The mother bear stopped at the edge of the clearing, waiting for them to catch up. Liam gasped in delight. "It's the talking tree," he exclaimed. "The one she showed me in my dreams." Oliver looked around the peaceful clearing, trying to understand its significance. Why did she bring us here, Liam? Before Liam could answer, the mother bear moved toward the ancient oak, stopping at its base. She rose up on her hind legs and placed her front paws against the trunk, stretching to her full height. With careful movements of her claws, she marked the bark, leaving distinct patterns that didn't look like ordinary bear scratches. Liam watched, transfixed. "She's telling the tree about us," he whispered. "She's saying we helped her family when no one else would. She's putting our names in the story." Oliver approached slowly, studying the marks on the tree. Now that he looked more closely, he could see that the entire trunk was covered with similar markings. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of them. Some fresh, others weathered by time until they were barely visible. They formed patterns that seemed almost deliberate, too regular to be random damage. "These are bear writings?" he asked, scarcely believing his own words. "Not writing like our writing," Liam explained. "More like memories. The bears come here to put their important memories in the tree. Then other bears can learn them." The mother bear dropped back to all fours and stepped aside, looking at Oliver expectantly. "She wants you to touch the tree, Daddy," Liam said, "where she put our names." Feeling slightly foolish but unwilling to disappoint either his son or the bear, Oliver stepped forward and placed his hand on the freshly marked bark. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, so subtly he might have imagined it, he felt a warmth beneath his palm that didn't seem to come from the sun-heated wood. With the warmth came a cascade of images, fleeting, dreamlike impressions that passed too quickly to fully grasp. A mother bear losing her mate to human hunters. Cubs in danger. A desperate journey through storm and darkness. A human child with no fear. A man who helped instead of harmed. Safety found. A debt acknowledged. Oliver stumbled backward, startled by the intensity of the experience. It was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving him disoriented and breathless. "Did you see them, Daddy?" Liam asked eagerly. "Did you see the pictures in the tree?" I'm not sure what I saw," Oliver admitted, staring at his hand as if it might hold some explanation. "There were images, but so fast." "That's because you're not a speaker," came a voice from behind them. Oliver whirled around to find they were no longer alone in the clearing. A teenage girl stood at the forest's edge, her long dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. She wore the khaki uniform of the sanctuary's junior rangers, but her posture suggested a confidence beyond her years. "I'm Maya," she introduced herself. "I work with the guardian mother's sister. Dr. Michael sent me to find you when you didn't answer your radio." Oliver patted his pockets, realizing he'd left the communication device back at the cabin. "Sorry about that. We were invited on an unexpected tour." Maya smiled, completely at ease despite the presence of the bears. "The guardian mother doesn't invite many adults to the message tree. You should feel honored." She approached without hesitation, stopping to acknowledge the mother bear with a respectful nod that was returned in kind. "You called it the message tree," Oliver noted. "You understand what these markings mean." "Some of them," Maya replied. "The older ones are harder to interpret. The language changes over generations, like any form of communication, but the basic patterns remain consistent." She traced her fingers over a set of marks higher on the trunk. "This tells of a great fire, 100 years ago. This one records a season when salmon failed to return to the spawning grounds. This one remembers a child who was lost in the forest and guided home by bears." "And you can read these? Like Liam understands the bears?" Maya considered the question. "Not exactly like reading. It's more receiving. The memories are stored in the tree somehow. And when speakers touch the markings, the memories transfer. It doesn't work for most adults. Their minds are too— She searched for the word. Too settled, too certain about how the world works. The mother bear made a soft huffing sound, and Maya smiled as if at a private joke. She says, "You're different," the girl translated. "You still have questions inside. That's why you could feel something from the tree, even if you couldn't understand it clearly." Oliver wasn't sure whether to be flattered or unsettled by this assessment. How many of these trees are there? 7 that we know of, scattered throughout the protected wilderness, Maya answered. They're ancient. Carbon dating of the core samples puts the youngest at over 300 years old. The indigenous people of this region considered them sacred and protected them long before the sanctuary was established. The implications were staggering. Generations of bears recording their experiences, creating a communal memory that spanned centuries. It contradicted everything science understood about animal cognition, about the limitations of non-human intelligence. If these bears have been communicating this way for hundreds of years, Oliver wondered aloud, why hasn't it been documented? Why isn't this common knowledge? Maya's expression grew serious. Because humans who discovered it either didn't believe what they were seeing, or— She hesitated. Or they understood its value and tried to exploit it. The bears learned to hide their abilities from most humans. They passed that knowledge down through these trees, through their collective memory, which humans to trust, which to avoid. But children like you and Liam can still connect with them. Children who are born with the gift, yes, the bears call us the ones with open minds. They seek us out when they need help, when there's danger they can't face alone. Maya looked at Liam with a gentle smile. It's a big responsibility being a speaker, but it's also the most amazing gift. The mother bear made a series of soft sounds, and both Liam and Maya listened attentively. She says it's time to go back, Liam reported. Other bears are coming to use the tree. Maya nodded in agreement. We should respect their space. Bears from all over the valley come here to record important events. We're privileged they allowed us to witness this. As they prepared to leave, the mother bear approached Oliver once more. She rose slightly on her hind legs, bringing her face level with his, close enough that he could feel her warm breath, could see the intelligence in her dark eyes. There was no fear in that moment, no sense of danger, only a profound communication that transcended the boundaries between species. She's saying thank you, Liam whispered, for believing. Most grown-ups don't believe, even when they see. Oliver found himself nodding, acknowledging the truth of this observation. How many times in his ranger career had he dismissed unusual animal behavior as coincidence or anthropomorphism? How many indigenous stories about animal intelligence had he respected culturally but doubted scientifically? The mother bear dropped back to all fours and, with a final look at their small group, turned and padded away into the forest, her cub following closely behind.